Hey y'all, my name is Lesley Mandy's and for my controversial topic or issue, I decided to choose does spanking actually work? So, on my first slide, I have a couple of definitions. So, the definition for spanking a child is a form of corporal punishment, which is when a parent or guardian is inflicting physical pain to punish a child for unacceptable behavior. So I underlined form because this is very important to understand. So for the next definition, so corporal punishment is like spanking, which includes whooping, or people call spanking slapping, grabbing, popping, smacking, basically handling your child in any way, um, and roughly and in any way is a form of corporal punishment. So corporal punishment is kind of this big umbrella, and spanking is just one of those terms in that big umbrella. But when you're hitting your kid with any object other than your hand, like a belt, a brush, a fly swatter, a wooden spoon, or a chancla, it does fall underneath the U.S. definition. It falls as it identifies as abuse. It's usually considered separate from child abuse. Like spanking specifically is usually different than child abuse, but the distinction can be kind of unclear. But I think that spanking, once you're using your hand, can be okay. But like if you're using, like it said, like a belt or like a brush, then that is considered um abuse because you are inflicting very, very harsh pain on your kid that is not needed. And then I made this big graph off of some studies that I researched, that I looked up, and you can kind of just see the increased decline of spanking. So in the 90s, 85% of parents said that they did spank their kid, whether it be with their hand or with a belt. In the 2000s, 70% of parents said they spanked their kids. And then in 2010, it was like 60 to 70%. It was kind of a mix. Um, a percent of parents said that they did spank their kids. And then in 2020 till now, there has been a humongous decrease of parents that do spank their kids. So only 16% of people spank their kids. So from the 1990s to 2020, almost a like huge 70, more than 70% drop of people who do spank their kids, which I think is just crazy. And then I have some reasonings to why people decide to or not to spank their kids. So, on the right or on the left, I have the whys, which are like why people do, and on the right, I have the ends, which are why people don't. So, reasons why people do spank their kids is because they spank their kid as a child because they believe that they turned out all right, which then continues the cycle of spanking because they're like, oh, when I did this, my mom spanked me and I never did it again. And so I turned out all right. So I'm going to do that to my kid, which is not okay because obviously our kids are not us and we are not our kids, and so we're all different. Another reason why people spank their kids is because spanking often results in immediate behavior correction. So parents that are kind of like agitated, or they're just like seeking like a quick solution to misbehavior or their kids not behaving right, spanking will give that like immediate result, but in the long run it won't last, which we'll talk about more later. And then moving on, some reasons why people don't spank their kids is that studies have related physical punishment to increased aggression and mental health issues, and impaired cognitive development. So basically, spanking your kids slower, like it increases mental health issues and can slow their cognitive development and then increases their aggression. Um, Also, societal attitudes towards children have evolved, as we can see with the graph. Like even from 2010 to 2020, that little 10 years, people have humongously decided like to stop spanking their kids because they notice that it's not good. And there's just been more of a growing emphasis on kids and their rights and well-beings, because kids are not just little mini adults. Like they're actually kids that are learning and they're growing. Um, and we need to set a good example. Okay, so I have some kind of facts and my little bit. So older generations and spanking, so kind of like um older generations 40 and up. No offense to anyone 40 because I don't think you're old, but just more of like that millennial era and up, boomers and things like that. They probably been spanked more than once in their life, and their parents were spanked too. So most parents trying to emulate their parents' same parenting if they think that it helped them or they thought that it was useful, and they emulate their discipline style because they believe they turn out all right, kind of like how I said before. So though this can be true for some, spanking has many negative impacts on your kids. So spanking can help, but also in the long run, it has a lot of negative impacts. One of those impacts is it can lead to very much increased aggression in kids. So spanking more teaches kids that hitting is okay and it's acceptable way to solve problems, which then can lead to them being more aggressive to their friends, their peers, siblings, and other authority figures. So kids might think, oh, I'm not getting my way, so I'm just going to hit, um, which is not okay. And then it can lead to a damaged parent child relationship, because spanking can kind of take away that trust, that kids may have in their parents and instead replace that trust with fear because, yeah, replace that trust with fear instead of respect because they feel less secure and emotionally protected to their parents because they think, oh, if I do something wrong, they're going to hit me. This can also, like I kind of talked about more in the last point, promote more fear than understanding. So, instead of parents like teaching their kids why the behavior is wrong, um, kids may only stop that behavior because they're just scared of getting hit. So, like, yeah, that's obviously not good because, yeah, they might stop that behavior because they're scared of being hit, but then later on down the road, they continue that behavior because they think, oh, well, I'm not going to get hit, so I can do what I want. And then because of this can prevent children from developing developing intrinsic motivations and problem solving skills. So that's not good, obviously. And then my last bullet point was like risk of mental health. A lot of studies have linked that spanking leads to higher rates of anxiety, low self esteem, depression, and all of these like mental health issues can affect someone later on in their adulthood life and their overall well being. So the next thing I was going to talk about is younger generations and no spanking. So a lot of the younger generations, like Gen Z or like people having kids younger, and maybe some millennials, for example, like my uncle, he is a millennial, but he decided not to spank his kids. So Gen Z and some millennials decide to stop spanking their kids because it either didn't work for them. So um, oh, I got spanked as a kid because I would like pound my head on the wall or something, but it didn't work because I continued to pound my head on the wall. So either they don't spank because it never worked for them, or they noticed that there are a lot of harmful side effects when you do spank your kid, and some parents just believe that it's wrong, and they notice that the harmful effect that it had on them, and they did not like the idea of inflicting that same pain on their kid that was inflicted on them as a kid. And so I wrote some points to why no spanking is good. So, it helped improve a lot of emotional regulation, which is really good for kids to learn as they get older. So, kids that aren't spanked are less likely to develop anxiety, aggression, and depression. But instead, they're able to learn healthier ways to manage their emotions and handle conflicts more in a positive way. Um, yeah. And then obviously the parent child relationship is a lot stronger because having some non-physical discipline can help foster a lot of that trust that kids may have, and also a lot of mutual respect between the parents and the kids. Um, and this can also just help that parent child emotional bond just and connection just be more stronger, and also doing this can help encourage open communication. And also it can help with better social skills. Speaking of communication, because without fear of punishment, with them communicating how they feel or what they're feeling, kids are able to more likely to develop empathy and be able to develop problem solving skills, which then can help them later on have better relationships with authority figures and friends and family and their peers. They were also at lower risk of having behavioral problems. A lot of studies have shown that kids that are disciplined through nonviolent methods are less likely to exhibit defiance and aggression and disobedience and other behavioral issues over time or leading on later on into life. Another thing is that it encourages problem solving and accountability. So when kids are not spanked, it can help them have focus on like positive discipline, and when parents are able to teach their kids consequences of their actions, it helps them foster responsibility rather than instilling fear of punishment when they do something wrong. Some takeaways that I got from this was that spanking can work for a quick adjustment in the moment, but in the long term and in the long run, it can actually harm your kid a lot. And that there are many reasons why parents may or may not decide to spank their kids, whether it be cultural, social, but in the long run, it's best if you don't. Also, I do believe that there is an appropriate time and rare times where it is okay to use corporal punishment on your children. Sometimes it is needed, but I feel like it is not always needed. Sometimes timeouts are good, or just peeking with your kids and telling them what is right and wrong, kind of like how we talked a little bit about on the last slide. So I wrote down a couple of that you could use for alternatives that you could use instead of spanking. So, one of them is timeouts, reasoning or finding a middle ground, and just like kind of talking to your kids, teaching your children problem solving skills, modeling, like being a model for your kids of respectful behaviors and actions, practicing positive reinforcement, and also when you set clear boundaries and expectations, not having those move around, because then that could later on be changed. Um, and here are some of my sources, and that was my presentation on if spanking really works. So I hope y'all enjoyed it.